Everybody, and thank you for joining us for the third community workshop for the Reimagining the McKinley School project. I am Julie DeMauro. I'm with the Department of Planning and Community Development. I'm joined here tonight by the director of the department, Ms. Tech Lang. We're also joined here by Superintendent of Revere Public Schools, Dr. Diane Kelly. And we are also joined by our creative architects who are actually walking us through tonight's presentation and the revisioning imagining exercise for the McKinley School. We have Sophie from Studio Luz and Elise from Studio Luz. So tonight, this broadcast is being shown on Revere TV and it is being recorded. We will go through a short presentation and then there'll be an exercise in which participants can ask questions and choose their optimal design for a space at the McKinley School. I asked that if anybody has any questions during the presentation that they put it in the Q&A and we'll answer those questions afterwards. So without further ado, Studio Luz, take us to Reimagine McKinley School.
Great. Can everybody see my screen? Awesome. So thank you all for coming. We're going to give it just like a brief project overview. I'm Sophie Norman. I am the Community Engagement Liaison and a designer at Studio Luz, and I'm joined by Elise, who is the project manager for this project, as well as several of our project partners, including Julie and the Mayor's Office and Diane Kelly representing Revere Public Schools. And so I'm just going to give about a 15-minute project introduction overview of what we've been looking at for revisioning the Revere Public School, and then we'll go into two different exercises to sort of gauge some feedback on what you guys would like to see. So the overall mission for the McKinley School is to transform the building into a beacon of accessibility, repurposing it for education and making, as well as creating spaces for entrepreneurship, as well as workforce training for a broad range of ages from 18 to 45 that will accommodate transitional workers, as well as serving as a community asset for seasonal art and performance events. And we're looking at the primary tenant being early education and childcare, with a constellation of support spaces for workforce development and entrepreneurship business opportunities. This is in part formed by the Revere Public Schools survey that has a vision for building out a centralized EEC program by 2024, and that early child center was listed as like a priority number 3 for the district overall. And the McKinley School program is also positioned in a way to flesh out and support and build in collaboration with the Suffolk Downs workforce and educational program needs for the city of Revere. So where Suffolk Downs has innovation centers, entrepreneurship, retail, residential office spaces, the McKinley School is looking at the early education and care, workforce training, performance gallery spaces, and small entrepreneur opportunities. This is sort of an overview of the stakeholders that we're working with and engaging, as well as possible service providers and end users that would fall under the 3 categories of education, entrepreneur, and workforce community-based organizations for the McKinley School user groups. And then looking at that overall constellation of an educational space supported with entrepreneur, workforce, and community-based and community assets sort of supporting and rounding out the overall network of programs to be happening within the McKinley School. We're also looking at, and I think it's really important to note, that Revere is an incredibly diverse city, and that the Revere's multilingualism, as well as looking at the workforce development for this diverse population and making sure that the Latinx and non-Hispanic and white balance of voices is really heard throughout all of the community engagement things as well. And so looking at site considerations, the McKinley School is located really centrally, as well as within really accessible distances from public transit. And so I think that's important to note when we're hearing feedback is what would you like to see that is within these accessible locations from Revere City Hall, the Paul Revere Park, the New Hill School. And so looking at where this is positioned in the city as a community asset is also a really important thing to take into consideration. And the McKinley School relocation occurred because the new school opened a block away, and this building only had one set of bathrooms, all located in the basement of the school. Odd-shaped classrooms weren't really designed for classroom spaces, but were initially for storage or maintenance rooms, and there's not a cafeteria space or kitchen facility that could serve the students. And this building is now sort of an empty slate in which we can propose a new program to occupy the floor plates. For the overall scope of work, we're looking at about 36,600 square feet that's being reprogrammed for educational and community activities. And we're currently in sort of the community engagement phase, determining programmatic needs, and later on we'll make recommendations of architectural improvements that support this, such as interior spatial reconfiguration, such as a new elevator, which would be really important, and we've heard is a high priority for the users of the building. So looking at sort of the balance of square footage for the overall program requirements, we're looking at about 24,000 square feet of occupiable usable space, and the other 12,000 being allocated to circulation support space. And so of the usable square footage, 11,790 square feet is sort of what is being looked at as allocated to the early educational care, with the remaining being split between workforce training and entrepreneurship and community asset spaces. And so if we look at this as sort of the breakdown of what would happen in that division of 50% of the usable plate being used for early education care, and the other 50% being split between the workforce training and the small entrepreneur opportunity spaces, such as lecture hall office spaces, innovation spaces, and then early education and care having about 8 classrooms, teachers' lounges, and additional support and evaluation spaces. And for sort of a preliminary look at what a transformative adaptation of the floor plan would look like, we've allocated half of the first floor and the second floor to be where the early education and care spaces are, with the remaining spaces sprinkled throughout the building and sort of dispersed, so that it is not just each program element siloed into one floor plate of the building where there's no interaction. We want to make sure that those interactions are vibrant and happen across to create sort of a dynamic space is what we've been looking at. So looking at the basement plate being innovative spaces and entrepreneurship, the first floor having classroom spaces on one side and then incubator business spaces on the other, and then the second floor being early educational care, with the third floor plan being additional innovation spaces and entrepreneurship. So I think if anybody has any questions, now would be a great time to kind of get at the questions from the Q&A section before we jump into some activities.
There's no questions from the attendees. Diane, do you have any questions that you would like to ask at this time?
No, I don't think so. I think it looks like a great plan, and I like the idea of having the kind of segregated spaces for the early education and care piece, but also being connected to the other pieces, because I think there could be some synergy between the learning for our little people and then the work that's happening in these incubator spaces, in ways that we can figure out how to partner with each other.
Great. All right, so I'm going to move into sharing different screen. All right. And so I think we're going to do like about 20 minutes. It's 5 questions of your personal voice. And so we're going to go through each of those questions, and we can mark down what spaces resonate with everybody, what people would like to see here is sort of the first question. We have workforce training spaces, performance art, outdoor areas, entrepreneurship, early education spaces, community education spaces, or community center spaces, or something else. And I don't know if Dr. Diane would like to start us off with what spaces.
I mean, I think they all are so needed in the city, and all would be beneficial, I think, to the residents. I feel a little bit like we need the residents to tell us what they really want to be here. And so I might defer to, I know there's one person. I'm wondering if there's going to be a way, if there might be some kind of a virtual spreadsheet that people could drop ideas in later if they watch the video at a different time, if they would be able to contribute that way.
Yes, we also have the public input page where all of these questions are available through the survey aspect of that. So I have a QR code link of that we can share as well.
That's great.
So the people can access a similar exercise that is being showed up on the screen at www.revere.org/McKinley. And we have a couple of participants on the meeting. Would anybody like to ask any questions now about the personal voice boards that are being shown?
Hello.
Gina.
Hi, my name's Gina. Hi. And I'm completely new to coming into this process. So I apologize if some things have already been addressed, and I'll try to catch up by looking at some other information. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. It seems like the presentation itself is already geared towards the early childhood. So I understand that, those plans were completely laid out. So it seems to me, I know you're asking for a personal voice. Are you saying in addition to, or the plans that were just presented are set? I'm a little confused.
So no, it would be in addition to the early childhood and care programming that would be within the building. So there is additional space in the building, and we are trying to plan for the appropriate use for that space in the building. So
that makes sense. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So
You're welcome.
what else we would like to see there then? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think I need to ruminate a little bit more on some of the choices, but I do believe something that could coexist with the existing opportunities there for the early education then is perfect. And I think Diane Kelly referred to that, is what kinds of things can go alongside that. And it would certainly be nice to have something very closely linked. Yeah. So I can understand that. I think I just need to review this a little bit more, but I can obviously send some input in as well.
Great. And so do you have any spaces that you, like off the bat, immediately think would work well in connection with the early education spaces that you would love to see a synergy between, or do you need a minute on that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely love to see the elderly coming into that workspace. And maybe that's another choice. To work alongside them. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for them to coexist somehow, to work with each other. I think there's a lot of lost opportunity between those age spectrums, and they could certainly work well with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with Gina on that. Like, one of the things that the research shows is that there's a really great symbiotic benefit to young children visiting with and spending time with elderly people. Both the elderly benefit from it and the kids benefit from it. So, I'll just kudos to Gina for bringing that up.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you so much.
And the other thing that I'd bring up too is, and I know you talk about the workforce, and I think that's integral, because I'm often looking at why I go to other cities to do things, and it's not here in Revere. So I am gonna continue to provide you guys some feedback on that, because I might go to Chelsea for some other areas in that help me in my times of need here. From CAPIC to workforce to, they have a new development center there helping with taxes. So everything I'm doing seems to be in another city. And I'd like to take pride in knowing that Revere had those opportunities. And so those are just 3 quick ones, but I know that there must be more that we could, do there. And I definitely will look into that and reflect and be able to provide you guys some more info.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and this is Tech Lang from the Planning and Community Development team speaking. Gina, to just add to that point, I think one of the most the greatest upsides of this site is that it's accessible, physically accessible, far more than a lot of sites outside of the city are, and exactly what you've described, which is the availability of programs and resources that our residents need that are currently being sought elsewhere because they're not available in Revere is exactly the type of thing that we want community feedback on. So if there's specific programs, specific services, and specific types of resources, whether you want to name the specific program, i.e. CAPIC, or Connect, I think that's probably what you're referring to with the tax center.
Yes, that was, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We are very familiar with Connect here. But if you want to think of specific types of services, like we would love to see a site where residents can access tax prep, or specifically, of a particular program that serves seniors or youth arts or something that you would love to see replicated, all of those examples are really helpful insights for us too, because they're models that we can study in terms of space allocations, operations, and things like that. So just more food for thought. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks so much, Tech, for jumping in on that. I think the next question is, are there spaces that you would not like to see happen at the McKinley School that you don't think are appropriate for this location or this building in conjunction with the sort of proposed early education programs? Or if you would just like to see something completely different, that would be great to get feedback on what synergies you don't see aligning with the space.
Sophie, can you make the block a little bit bigger?
Yeah.
My older eyes are.
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got workforce training spaces, performance art gallery spaces, outdoor areas, entrepreneurship, business incubator spaces, community education spaces, or something else if there's other spaces that you just absolutely would not like to see be considered.
So one thing that I'll mention is that we are in the process, beginning stages, so it's a few years away, but we're in the process of building a new high school, which is going to have a pretty extensive performing arts space. So I just wonder if that would be a little bit redundant to put a lot of time and energy into also building one at the McKinley School. I anticipate that we'll still have access to the auditorium at the existing high school, and we have some performance spaces in our other buildings, like at the West Revere complex. There's a big performing arts center, and at the Rumney Marsh Academy, there's not a large space, but there's actually a nice little theater in the round kind of space set up there. So in my mind, I feel like that's one place that we probably have other resources we could tap rather than using that space at the McKinley.
Great, that's awesome to know. I'm not sure if Gina, if you have any.
No, and I appreciate her insight. There's so many great things that are happening here in Revere, and we've got to think about what's coming at Suffolk Downs, and she brings up the new high school. So I appreciate that. The going back to the point though about the access, because I happen to live in this community very close to this school, and I always go back to what are the needs within that walking. So and close to the needs, and so I need to tap into more into what this community, I guess Ward 4 might need within walking, because I think that's where the highest need is, and it's the early child education. That's awesome. That is critical. But it's going to be a walk or a distance for people to get to that other high school, which isn't a problem, but we got to think about what else can coexist, I guess. I actually think the performing arts is a really good idea, but you're all right. We've got to see what else is out there and what needs to be drawn to this community here.
Mm-hmm.
So Gina, this is Tech again. I have a follow-up question for you or any other attendees who may want to come off mute. And it has to do with access and circulation. Are there any particular things that you observed in addition to what you just said about the site, the neighborhood, the surrounding streets, sidewalks, ways of getting there, parking, biking, bus, walking? Are there things that you think are worth the team considering?
No, I appreciate the input for this. I think there's so many good things. The access is great. The convenience is good. What comes to mind, and maybe this is a personal preference, so I have to look at our community here, but it's wellness and it's wellness. It's health. It really concerns me. It's my favorite thing. So I've returned from I grew up here for 20 years, came back here to take care of my mom. So I've seen, so I know this community, but I'm also learning the new parts of it. But one thing that I don't see a lot of is care for wellness and health. And it needs to be a priority. It needs to be. And I don't know how to make that connection to that place. But if there was anything to be able to access, it would be health and wellness.
Mm-hmm. I see Olga.
It's once again one of those things that I go to other cities for.
Yeah.
Health and wellness, including food. And that's real difficult for me because it's a necessity and I can't get good, healthy food here. Fitness, health, all of it. I go to other cities. So it would be nice if that could be accessible somewhere in Revere, but even so closer to it within Ward 4.
Great. I think somebody else had.
We have Olga. I'm going to unmute. Okay. And go ahead, Olga. What?
Hi, thank you. So I think all of the options there are very important. I was just listening to Dr. Kelly about the performance art gallery spaces. Obviously, we don't want to duplicate if there's spaces already. So if the access to that space, I know the school can be difficult to access after hours of operation. And if that is not going to be the case, then it's fine. I will agree to replace with a wellness space for maybe Zumba classes for where people can run a Zumba class for kids. I know there's 3 kind of Zumbas for kids, for adult, for elder, and for adults. So just to try thinking about maximizing a space. I do agree. I'm sorry, I'm on my phone. I can't see names, but I do agree with the person who just spoke. We had to go somewhere else to join those classes because here there is not space to run one of those. And we're always finding places where it's very expensive to access. And I know that's tied to the well-being, health overall of our community. When we don't have the opportunity to join a class, either free or low cost, our health, it's implicated.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I'll say, just to speak to Gina's point and Olga's point, the vision for the new high school, and one of the limitations will be that it's slated to be built at the Wonderland site, which is on the far end, one end of the city. So definitely access might be difficult for some. It is going to be, it is right near the Blue Line. It's right near the Wonderland Station. So there will be some MBTA access that way. And I know there's a plan that the city is just engaged in developing around having a commuter rail station there as well. But the idea is that one of the limitations on the current high school is the way that it's designed. It's difficult to isolate the academic parts of the building from the other pieces, which we would like to be more accessible to the community, but it becomes a bit of a security risk. But the vision for the new school is to have what our architects have been calling a heart of the school, which would be like a big cafeteria, commons. It would be connected to the theater arts wing, which we envision to have both an indoor and an outdoor component. So there could be outdoor performances during the good weather times, and also connected to our health and wellness wing. So right now at the high school, we have an MGH satellite health clinic, but it's only available to students during the day. And they do some work with students and other members of the community, youth, not adults, after school hours. We built a separate entrance for them so that it could be secure. But the vision is that the new high school would have that kind of heart of the building that's accessible to the community outside of school hours. And we envision this being a building that would be open until about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night every day. And that there would be things like meditation classes and Zumba or yoga, a whole mindful component to the health and wellness wing, and also have some behavioral health services, have social workers that are available if somebody's struggling emotionally and needs some on-demand support. So we are trying to be mindful of those needs in building the new high school. As I said, the new high school is probably 4 or 5 years away. So it's not a good short-term solution, but I do think that we should think about it as we're thinking about, where will there still be gaps for the community, even when that resource is available to them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great idea, great opportunity. And just in considering and using technology, even though that is so far away, it would be great if there was workspace there or space so that we could join in a class remotely.
Yeah.
Maybe, if they're doing meditation, why couldn't there be the satellite to connect this ward, I'm going to speak in terms of Ward 4, to other areas and access, but other things are going on. So there's an integral link, and I don't have to get in my car to go across there, because that's great. Those opportunities are there,
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's also become much more possible in light of the digital shift that we've seen in the last 2 years, that a remote or satellite option might be more feasible.
It would certainly be great if I could just walk there and sit in the meditation, or walk there and take a yoga class, or walk there and take a course on 101 on health or how to eat, or a nutrition class. But the real reality is that class is being hosted at the high school, right? And it be great if every ward almost had that opportunity, that I didn't have to get to that high school, because now you're talking about driving, or, being able to access it within my own, group of people that I know in my community. So I'm sure technology will be there in a few years. So that would be great.
Yeah.
I just want to make a comment about accessing health and wellness. I think I've, been working out for quite some time, but one of the things that I always look at is how convenient is it for me to access that class. Is it at an appropriate time? Will I hit traffic? Will it take me a lot to get there? So I think, having something at the site would really be a nice little add-on to the other programming that is going to be happening at the new high school, at this there is plans for a newer health and wellness center in another part of the city that's being developed. But to have some sort of space to, like you said, hold like a restored yoga class where it's quiet, it's separated, and it's convenient for people to get to, I think is going to be key here as we roll out this plan. And that could be something that the room takes on a different function during the day, but at night or on a Sunday morning, it can be used for this type of purpose.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. I think that was a really fruitful conversation about that. And so I think we're going to move to just sort of when you walk through the door of this space, what would you like the first thing you see to be? Is it a smiling face, someone that's going to show you where you're going? Is it signage? Is it artwork or displays of community members' work? Is it information about things happening here, elsewhere in town? Is it open spaces to hang out? Is it just community activities going on nearby? Is it something else? Sort of, what is the entry feeling of the space for you?
I will imagine a welcoming person at the front, and then art gallery on the walls, and then a bunch of information about what is happening in the whole building and opportunities. I'm just imagining as a new immigrant walks in or move into the city of Riviera, that's the place where they can go to get information about different things, about different resources going on that building.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Olga, for sharing that.
And I
agree
second
with
that.
Yeah.
I do second that in terms of, I initially think too that person there is important. That smiling face to greet, but not necessary as I think through, because, you're talking about a cost unless that person volunteered or something, but definitely need information that's clean and clear about what's happening there as well as in other parts. So it might need to be, I would like to see a signage board that isn't just paper, although I like paper, but communicative and use the technology. So whatever's happening at the high school, that class should be posted right there in Ward 4 too. It needs to change instantly and fast. And, I'm talking about the entire city. Your technology, you need to use technology to max it out. Even though I might like a paper copy, it's going to be out of date.
Almost like a live calendar.
Yes.
That has all of the events in their location and their time that people could either get if they came to the building, or they could just look it up online from home if they have computer access at home.
Right.
Right, but so that there's some unified available information that is accessible multiple ways.
And like a touch screen type thing too, so I can get to it. There needs to be, when you're doing that, it needs to be real clear, because you can get lost on that, where it's just clean and clear what's in the building. And then another screen where, okay, I want to access Suffolk Downs, I want to access that high school, and then it would screen into each of those on a separate one. Because if you do too much on one, it's going to be very difficult, especially with all the languages that are going to be necessary to be posted alongside that. You're going to be able to choose your language, right? So those are some great ideas. I like the idea that smiling face, it's so important, but I just don't know how much we could sustain that from 8 to 10 at night or whenever that access is there. But it's important. I have to say, my 94-year-old mother said she didn't need a smiling face. And I thought that was funny, because I thought for sure she, traditional thing, she'd want to see somebody there. She didn't think it was necessary.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
But I think even along with this, I think the signage is important as well, because if you do move past that kiosk or TV or whatever it is where you can look up the information and you're somewhere else in the building, you still want to know how to get from where you are to the bathroom or the exit or the elevator or, so I do think signage is really important as well.
In terms of wayfinding within the building.
Yes. Yeah.
And also about safety, right? You want to know who's entering the building as well.
I like that idea, Olga. That's great. Maybe the doors or certain areas on that touchscreen or something could light up to indicate that there's people present in certain areas.
Yeah.
Or class, that door is open, and it's when the door is open or shut, or there's, a heat sensor or something, that it can show that there are people occupying that area.
Okay. And so I think we've kind of already touched on this, but the spaces that are the most important for you that you would want us to consider, we have the same ones we've been discussing. Is it multicultural events? Is it gardens? Is it outdoor play areas? Is it something else? I think there's another opportunity to catch any other spaces that we may be missing that might have come up since we've been thinking.
I know that maybe Julie has this exact number in her mind, but I know that when we talked to Joanna Rizzo, who's our early childhood coordinator, there is some requirement for outdoor space for the early childhood program in order for it to be certified by the state. So I would just say we have to keep that in mind.
So we have, we originally, and I think Studio Luz has set aside about 2,000 square feet for a separate playground, and right now, I think in the original plans or the initial iterations that are being drawn up, that 2,000 square foot playground is actually in the front of the building.
Oh, nice.
And so that would be something that would only be available for the early childhood center. And, maybe it be so that access is directly from the building itself. I don't know how that would play into the space, but I do know that it is 2,000 square feet and it's on the front of the building.
That's great.
Yeah. And then I know from one of the previous workshops, somebody had brought up the discussion of whether there's community garden space in the remaining outdoor areas surrounding the building. But if there's any other spaces that people wanted to make sure.
There was also the question of saving the basketball courts that are on the space already. There is one basketball court there that I believe the youth zone painted and does use. So I think we would want to make sure that we can preserve that somehow.
Great.
I think my interest lies in, again, this is a big idea, that if you use the gardening or you have an outdoor space, which is necessary, for compliance and things like that, that we, and it's a huge struggle, but how do we make sure it's also inside, right? So how do they, and this is an architectural design issue, I guess, that it's brought inside. So why does gardening just have to be occurring during the summer? Why can't it be a greenhouse effect? So we see how it is that we're getting food, again, going back to wellness and the need of our community to eat healthy, that it's not there in the winter. So kids just go, okay, the garden's gone, now what? It's dead. No, we need to bring it back. And can there be a greenhouse or something so that they can understand that we bring it in during the winter here? Same thing with the outdoor space. If that outdoor space is necessary, are we saying it's enclosed? That 2,000 square foot space in this front, and then there's space for them inside during the winter. And again, that's an architectural issue. I'd like to see it somehow blend in well so that the outdoor area blends in with the inside so that when the winter comes, they can't go outside, right? Again, a new area for me.
Believe it or not, they do go outside in the winter. As long as it's not raining or snowing.
Right. But you understand, right? Why couldn't there be a visual nature to it that allows it to be an inside-outside thing? There must be something out there that's evident, or I'm sure I probably find it somewhere, probably in Sweden, but
Yeah.
but extends that outdoor use. And again, yeah, they can go outside and get the fresh air, but it's a tunnel or something so that they can see that, oh yeah, this closes at this time because it's raining, but we can still do it and see the sun or see the clouds and the rain above us. But we're still working out. We're still playing here.
And that might be, we have the other community gardens, which are very traditional in other parts of the city. There's one at the current high school. But maybe we find a way to do like a hydroponics program for community gardening at this building. And the kids could learn from that. Like we do some hydroponic growing in our other schools. But we could do a hydroponic program where the kids are learning about hydroponics, but it's actually a community garden where people have their little areas. I don't know exactly how people register for the community garden spaces, but do you get the gist of what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, so that each person has their own
plot
plot of,
yeah.
But there's an opportunity there where you're saying it would be able to tie into educational programming as well. Great. And so I think that also is a great segue of how the surrounding community can be invited here or involved in what is going on here in ways that may not be just, okay, they have this space, but are there opportunities where we can sort of tie in these other existing community programs to what we see happening here? If there are programs that you would love to see wrapped into the programs that we've been talking about already, that would be.
I'm not sure. I think it's just a matter of the smart and best use of the technology to incorporate, from the, and I don't know if it's the right word is satellite or so, but the connection in the city has to be made across so that we feel as one, but that I'm going to say word 4, feels might be connected more because we're closer. But that doesn't leave us out of the other opportunities in Revere. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes sense. You want to feel like it is within the community as well as connected to the spaces elsewhere, and how this sort of can help negotiate those relationships in a way.
The interconnectedness, yes, of Revere. Mm-hmm.
If nobody else has any feedback, we just have a couple other cards where we can kind of go through some aesthetic exercises, and people can play designer of what their personal preferences are for the different spaces. This is just starting with arts and cultural spaces, which may be more aligned with things that are happening at the new high school, but if we could consider also just like a multi-purpose space that could also facilitate some of these other Zumba classes that have been mentioned, if there are spaces that you can just really envision enjoying at the McKinley School. You can just kind of go like shout out like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. If anybody has any preferences. I can make it a little bit larger.
I will say that when I was thinking about the performing arts, I was thinking more of stage performances, musical performances, that kind of thing. But I'm looking at F and I'm thinking art gallery. So that could be really cool.
And if there's an opportunity there to also tie in, that becomes programming for the early education center. They're accessing arts programming right there as well. Not sure if Gina or Olga, you guys have any other ones that you really are interested in or excite you. You can also just type it in the chat. If not, we can also just move on to the other spaces.
I think bringing in art is great idea. I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute
You're good.
myself. It is important. I think we need to value that more, and within the community. So I do agree with that. Display is awesome, and I do like the ability to make it flexible. And I don't know if H is the best one there. It's so hard for me to see these with walls that are flexible, but built, so we can have classes that people can teach, or have smaller rooms that are dividers or something like that. So I don't know if H is the right one there. Maybe it's the one above it, D, but some flexibility so that we can have courses in technology, So it's, I'm concerned about it being too big, but again, I don't know all the opportunities that we have. I just don't want to be so short-sighted that we can't. Large, space is great, but we also have to think about being able to conform when we need smaller spaces.
Right. Yeah, some programs aren't totally suited to a wide open studio space.
Is the H, is that a closed space? Does it have like a main door? I'm just imagining.
So this is the image is a large dance studio.
But is it like let's say running a Zumba class there with loud music? Is it does it have a door? Will it have a door so other programs or other things around it won't be distracted by the noise?
I mean, I think that's something that would definitely be taken into consideration for a space like that. I think smaller class sizes need to be accommodated. We can make a note that acoustic separation, is an important thing to take into account for performance spaces. And then for these smaller workspaces, such as like entrepreneurship spaces, how do we sort of envision that happening? Is it individual acoustic spaces? Are they more semi-open mobile pods that people can sit down, get a couple hours of work done while their children might be occupied elsewhere? Or is it more like formal co-working office spaces or cubicle spaces for individual entrepreneurs? So kind of like, what would that look like in the space if you saw it here?
I struggle with change because all of these look so different to me. And when I see things, I gotta kind of take a step back and go, okay, these are different, like F, and oh boy, and take a deep breath. But I know I'm trying to be open-minded to it too. It's hard. But I think the private ones are good to have if there's like consultation or something. So I would think an opportunity to have the flexibility to have a couple private offices that you might have a small group in, but then the flexibility to have a group of 20 or 30 in an area. So I'm not gung-ho on any one of these particular. If that's necessary, they just...
I also agree to have the flexibility of have both, the private space where, let's say, running a program there where I need to, for people to fill out intake forms, and I will run a kind of, not an interview, but intake form where they have to, we have to ask their income, their families, so confidential information that in an open space, it's hard to keep it confidential. So I'm leaning towards having both. I don't know if that would be possible, but
I think
Well-
that's exactly what we're trying to figure out here is what spaces.
Yeah. And when I think about safety, it's probably a good idea. Like I'm looking at D, I can't really tell if those are like semi-transparent walls.
These would be
Where-
like the frosted.
Yeah, something like that where you can see if somebody's in a space or if multiple people are in a space, but you can't see who it is or hear what they're saying. Do you know what I mean? But there's still that safety element that you know where people are. But there's still that transparency around what's going on in a room.
Yeah, it's not quite such a stark boundary
Yeah.
while still
And-
meeting. Go ahead.
And I'll just add another thing. In addition to the confidentiality piece, the consultation that needs to happen for different types of programs, or the one-on-one conversations. I mean, say it's interview prep, say it's all sorts of things. I do want to add as a point of emphasis the importance of thinking about sound isolation might be extreme, but even from a sort of sensory perspective, there are quite a few people who have a high degree of difficulty sort of navigating and working with a lot of ambient sound. Some people love it, some people hate it. So crafting spaces where that is cared for people who may have particular challenges, I think is important, in addition to balancing the broader sort of public spaces in the building. But yeah, I think in addition to the safety, the sort of sensory experience people have may demand that we think about at least a handful of more sound isolated spaces.
Fantastic.
Thanks, Tech. And just to add a little bit of the safe, we want people to feel safe. And I'm just talking about my own experience here serving the community. We deal with domestic violence victims, so they're always fearful about their partners following up or seeing where they are. I think having this space will make people feel safe and secure there. I just wanted to, Tech just remind me of that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sort of that perspective on the need for safe and sensory spaces that really accommodate everybody in the community feeling welcome. Sort of on the other end of the spectrum in terms of meeting and education, classroom spaces, I think if we could kind of look at what those spaces might look like. Is it hands-on learning spaces? Is it more about like flexible seating or built-in storage? Are we looking at like intergenerational education / care programs? Is it more like technology education? Or are most of those play areas also educational play areas? And so which are the priorities and what do you love about those spaces?
I think that intergenerational is an awesome concept, and one we should tap into. And again, if wellness is a priority, combining that with the education, I'd like to see, I guess it's more G, C, G, and A, I guess, but if I had to say something.
Yeah. I'm not sure, Diane, if you have any insight in terms of like what the curriculum for those spaces really, what types of spaces are more conducive and work the best for early education programs?
Yeah, so typically the class size is relatively large, 1,100 square feet for each room. And that's because they'll have a variety of different learnings in the room itself.
Okay.
So there'll be like a teacher table where 3 or 4 kids might sit together. There'll be a reading corner where they might sit on mats or on a rug. There'll be a computer station where they can do some independent work online. So I think that's kind of covered. In those rooms, we would probably want more of like the flexible seating that can move around, you know? Mm-hmm. One of the things that we've been trying to do more of is alternative seating structures. So we have been buying like chairs that kind of have some movement in them so that kids who have a lot of energy can expel that while they're still seated in a chair. And with the little ones, we often see that some of them have those sensory needs and have different things that they need in order to learn in that environment. So we'd be looking to do more of that as well at the school.
So I'm hearing a lot more flexible, movable elements within the space versus like larger built-in components that would have to be worked around and would
definitely, yeah.
Okay.
And just speaking from our, sorry, go ahead, Olga.
No, I agree with you, Dr. Kelly.
And one thing that we've learned from COVID is that we need to be able to move away from each other when we need to. So having that kind of flexible seating, flexible tables, instead of having a big workspace that you're going to put all 6 kids at together, something could come up that we want to be able to pull that apart and separate those kids. So definitely looking at furniture that way.
Yeah. So Diane, I was going to say the same about seating as well, but I want to actually prompt Olga with a question. Olga, I happen to know, because I'm familiar with your program and the space in which you operate, that you constantly have to balance your adult students, parents, with young children in a very sort of proximate nearby space. Could you, do the images in front of you sort of generate a reaction from you about how the sort of closeness or the separation of parents participating in programs and children being alongside them? Does it generate any reactions from you? If not, that's okay, but I figure you may be thinking about this as well.
No, thank you, Tech. And I've been asking for this space for years. And you're right. So when I see these pictures, I know it's hard because I'm just learning still learning, but I will envision, a class, as a close space where we can run our programs. Just to share more information, we run programs for adults, ESL classes, conversation classes, workforce trainings, computer classes for adults, and usually most of the time are parents with little kids. And obviously right now we were struggling prior to the pandemic to provide childcare. Those parents don't have a choice to pay a babysitter so they can attend trainings. So usually we were welcoming them with their kids. So we'll supervise them in the corner while the parents were at the other side. What I was envisioning with this opportunity of reimagining the McKinley was to have a separate space where the parents can focus on their learning without being distracted by the kids' noise. And so seeing this picture, obviously we'll be running into the same issues. We stopped providing that because of the pandemic. We can't have kids and adults in the same room. And but I was listening about the childcare options or a space. As long as if there's a room with the flexibility to fit maybe 10 to 12 kids, I will say, to provide childcare for those parents who are taking classes. And we do serve all low-income families, so everything we provide is free. So if we provide childcare, it will be free. If we provide a training, it will be free. So we'll just need 2 separate spaces, one for the kids and one for the adults to take the classes.
So one of the things that Fatu does at the community school right now is she hires high school kids to watch the children, and they're in one space while their parents are in other spaces taking classes or whatever. And I imagine we could do the same thing here and actually use those early childhood classrooms for childcare in the evening, because Olga, most people would be taking classes in the evening. Is that right? Or would you need it during the day as well?
During the morning, because actually we're transitioning out. We were serving the morning and afternoon just to serve both populations who either can attend the morning and vice versa. So, but right now learning that Riviera Community School provides all of their services. So we're trying to be aware of duplicating services. So we're focusing during the morning so we can serve those who cannot attend in the PM or afternoon classes. So we will need mostly in the morning.
Okay.
And yes, so prior we hire a babysitter to supervised, I will say. It's not a child care because the liability comes into a big concern as well. So supervising them in a corner so we can run the SEM. But I was envisioning that we can look for some funds and actually really have a child care provider even to help us with that services while their parents are in the other room taking the classes. So but
Olga, can I ask a couple of follow-up questions?
Yes.
When you think about, or as you program the duration of the classes and the not childcare, but babysitting and watching of children, how many hours are you thinking about? Is it like 2.5 hours of class? Is it a 4 to 6 hour stretch? Like, what does that tend to look like?
So right now we're not providing, but if we provide classes, if we go back to provide classes and we're moving away from the afternoon classes, we will be running programs back to back. The duration of the classes are mostly 3 hours, no more than 3 hours. Computer classes, job readiness is 2 hours. English classes are 2 hours. But because we're going to be providing only morning classes, I will assume that we'll, like right now, after in April, in April, we'll be running back-to-back classes, like 10 to 12, 12 to 2. So I will say 4 hours per day of childcare. Different kids, obviously, but different parents.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful to know. We know that, and we learned from the master planning process that making sure that parents with younger children really, really need that support to be able to be active and engaged in programs. So it is something that we really want to troubleshoot in terms of creative strategies. And I think a lot of these things can be balanced if we just think carefully about time, as you are with the community school. So thank you, Olga. And I want to move on if there's another set of slides.
Can I say one more thing, Tech? Sorry, before we move on. I'm just thinking out loud here because I haven't thought this through fully, but there might be a way if we could find somebody, because I'm thinking a lot of these kids are too young for early childhood or kindergarten, which is why they're not enrolled in those programs already. But if there is a child care provider, we might be able to arrange for high school students to do internships where they provided that childcare at the McKinley during the day for Olga's classes, like she was just saying. So, as I said, I haven't thought that through fully, but I just want to say that out loud as something that we can follow up on and see if we can't figure out a partnership that would solve the childcare problem for parents and also give our students internship opportunities.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Dr. Kelly. I think the issues we were running prior was not funding the childcare cost, but it was finding a space where parents can really focus. You know, when you are learning a new language, you really have to have your 4 sense or 5 sense all focused. And they were not having that here because we run and operate. I think you know our space, Dr. Kelly. It's an 800.
One big room.
It's a big room where in a corner we run a lot of programs. In another corner is my office, and the other corner was a childcare supervision. Obviously, because of liability, we could then send them because over here in the same building, there is another space probably to rent, but that's hard to get it. So I think the issues were not having the person who watch and supervise the kids. The issue was the space where kids are not running to see their mamas at the other corner where they're practicing the English, right? And yes, once we have that space, obviously we'll need an assistance. That's where the kids and our partnership with you, Dr. Kelly, will be helpful because we always need more people to watch our kids.
Yeah.
And so, Olga, when you're talking about these classroom spaces for the adult education programs, it seems like it's more helpful if those spaces are smaller and subdivided to allow more personal and one-on-one instructions to be happening.
Yes, exactly.
Rather than a large room is a problem.
Yeah, a large room will be a problem because right now, for example, we can run 2 programs simultaneously. We have to wait even with a divider, the other group might be, having English exercise where it's only talking and having fun and it's too loud for the other space where they're learning computer classes or finishing up their resume. So we got a divider and we were using that for the childcare, but the divider that doesn't block the sound at all, so the distraction still present. So that's why we have to run back-to-back programs because of the space. So yes, it would be useful to have a small room for 20 adults be sitting in a board, and then another room to watch the kids. And obviously, if there's a space for a private office where I attend, where we can welcome a person in crisis or a domestic violence, a victim, or somebody needs a guidance who just moved to the Riviera and doesn't know where to register their kids or where to look information. So we, believe me or not, we run into this daily, attending people in crisis for many reasons. So a private space, office space, it would be very nice.
Thank you so much for clarifying sort of how your daily operation works. I think that's really helpful for us considering what a classroom space for your program might look like is different than what an early education classroom might look like, and the different needs for that.
Thank you.
And I think we're at about 7:15 now, so I think we can probably wrap up if there's any final questions or input that anybody else would like to share.
I'll jump in with yet another prompt. So Gina, as a Ward 4, it sounds like as a Ward 4 resident, which you've said multiple times, I hope I'm correct. You have had a number of observations about amenities, resources, and spaces available for neighborhood residents, or things that may be gaps. So I would encourage you to share now, or to continue to sort of think about things that you really feel like not only meet gaps in the city, but things that you know residents would want to walk to, bike to, and get to, or maybe for that matter, things that you think would be productive and positive uses of this space from 8 a.m. to 8 or 10 p.m. Because the reality is that this is a major site and a very visible parcel right smack dab in the middle of our central business district. And so we really want to think about ways that we connect the dots between the McKinley, City Hall, the Legion, the stadium, the nearby schools, the senior center. So as much as you want to continue to think about the different resources available, and particularly for Ward 4 residents, because it's in your backyard, I would ask you to continue to do that and share your feedback. But the other sort of broad invitation I have for everyone on this call is to keep thinking about other partners, community members, and neighbors that you think really have a lot of information to share in terms of recommendations or feedback. And Olga, what you offered about the programmatic challenges of navigating space and putting the people in the space and giving them what they need so that they can advance themselves and their families, that's really, really helpful for all of us to hear, because it helps with the McKinley planning, but it probably informs, I bet Diane, Dr. Kelly probably has a lot of interesting insights for the high school and other spaces as well. So that's my piece. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tech, and everyone for bringing us together. I just want to throw out something else that comes to my mind. I don't know if it is an immigrant thing or if it is COVID, but we've been experiencing or seeing a lot of isolation from people, and that is affecting their physical and mental health a lot. And I think all of us. And there's a huge need of a space where people can socialize. You don't have to plan, or you don't have to have an excuse or a plan party or something. It's just the gathering. We've been doing once in a while here, and it's been a tremendous rewarding feeling, I will say, after people are coming and say, like, we need more of these. I've been isolated at home, becoming crazy with kids and COVID, and they just like feel so well, and also an opportunity to build community and support each other. I think it's a great resources when the community have this space and share and learn and support from each other. I think the city of Riviera lacks of that space, and I will love to see that happening. I'm sure there will be a room with a calendar or something that we can secure probably once a month and just get together. Maybe parents get together, maybe ladies get together. We call the Mom's Day Out or Ladies Day Out. And they're so looking forward to, like, this is my only free time or break time in years. I'm hearing that a lot from moms, where they leave their kids with the husband or somebody, and they come and enjoy and share, and sometimes they bring food and they just talk about their culture and food. So it's just an amazing opportunity to share or to be in community. So that's something to have in mind, and have the space there will be awesome.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thought, Olga. And you just reminded me of a concept that's like not unfamiliar to anyone who will hear me say this, but the idea of something that's like a living room for the community. Or there was a bar, I think, called The Living Room. The idea of a place that can serve as a living room for community groups and residents every so often, that offers that comfort and connection. I agree. The social isolation is something that has been observed and raised by actually at the community meeting that kicked things off for the senior population. For students with disabilities, and also I think veterans. So it's a common theme, and a space that serves mothers or immigrant women well will serve veterans well, and that will serve other people well also. So it's a really powerful point you raised, Olga. Thank you.
I have to jump off, but I want to thank you all. This was fabulous discussion, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly, for joining in. Do any of our other attendees have any other comments or thoughts that they would like to share before we end the meeting for tonight? Okay, so not hearing or seeing any, this has been a great discussion. Olga, thank you so much for all of the comments that you made, especially from a community-based organization, hearing from you and the type of space that you need, because that's going to be equally important as we go ahead and we plan out the rest of the building. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight and for all of the comments. In addition to this, what you saw tonight, the planning exercises with the what do we have in common regarding the different types of spaces and what you'd like to see there. That survey can also be accessed on the McKinley Public Input page at www.revere.org/McKinley. You can also leave comments about the space or about this broadcast and community meeting as well. We will have one final community meeting, and that will be on Wednesday. And it will be at 3:00. It will be via Zoom. There will be Spanish interpretation with that meeting as well, and it will be broadcasted on Revere TV. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we look forward to seeing the final presentation from Studio Lowe's sometime in April to show us how the space can be configured, and hopefully everybody will really enjoy the iterations that they prepare for us. Have a great night.
Thank you so much.